Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Scenes. I have the opportunity to talk to my friends in this space, creatives, people in the film and media industry, and we talk about life. We talk about things that go beyond what we do in our jobs on a regular basis. And I mean, for me, it's a privilege here to have Ciera Thompson and a colleague, filmmaker, all around director, producer, writer. Thank you for coming to the studio and sharing.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Carlos. I love the entire concept of this, going beyond what we all get to see on set, because that's how I mostly know you, is just
Yeah,
being on set together and
yeah.
working on projects and all of that.
It's awesome because before coming here, we went on my little farm back there,
Just
looking at
so
the
cool.
chickens and
Like, wow. It's really, I feel grateful knowing deeper that level of you and like what you're doing when you go home,
yeah.
super cute chickens and rabbits, and it's a whole ecosystem. I think that's what I'm the most impressed by. Like, it's a whole society. Is that like, but yeah, very cool.
I mean, the project started throughout the pandemic. Um, my family and I, we come from Miami, and we used to live in a very small place. When we moved here to Georgia, we have a bigger house with a huge backyard, and then the pandemic hits, and we're like, "What are we gonna do now?" So I started with these crazy projects. I bought a couple of chickens, and then from chickens we went to quails, and then having rabbits and
And
the
you said you had
fish.
70 chickens?
Right now we have 70 chickens.
Wow.
So when people come, they little do they know that behind the house there's a whole, a whole little fire in there. But it became a form of therapy, for me, like you said, to be able to come home and kind of disconnect.
Yes.
Or sometimes it's not even the disconnection. Sometimes it's about the reconnection with
Yes.
nature.
Yeah.
This year I've been reconsidering some of the things that I think about farming, and I don't have chickens. I keep chickens. So that's kind of like a new mindset that I have.
Your relationship to
Yeah,
them.
yeah. It's like I don't have these animals. I get the opportunity to take care of them, to feed them. In turn, they give me eggs, they give me company, they give me therapy.
I love that. Yeah.
And I'm translating that into relationships as well. Like I don't have people, I get the chance to experience life with them, because sometimes it's that like, oh, this is mine,
Yes, it's a ownership
yeah, ownership.
thing. Yeah.
And I have you because I'm interested in you, and you offer me something when you kind of shift that mentality. I'm not saying there's anything necessarily inherently wrong
Yeah.
with the concept of saying I have, or the linguistics of it.
Yes.
I'm just saying the intentionality of like, what is the intention behind saying, oh, I have this many friends, you know? Is it because it's clout that you want, or I have these chickens and I'm so cool about it, or man, I just somehow had the opportunity to think about, the fact that I can take care of them.
Yeah.
So it's a cool project, and I love when people come to the studio, just give them a little tour.
Yeah.
It's like another side of me is beyond the scenes. Yeah. So it's pretty fun that you got to experience that.
Yeah.
And I think it also sparks different type of conversations.
Yeah.
We are multifaceted type of people, and as artists sometimes we box ourselves into like, oh, I'm a filmmaker,
Right.
well, filmmaker is one of the facets, one of the aspects, and there are many other things that we are. But I mean, in my personal journey, I started as a filmmaker more coming from the background of photojournalism. So that's how I came into experience. But even before that, I was writing for a magazine. So I was 14 when I started writing for a magazine, and then I transitioned into photography, and more specifically about photojournalism. And from that, it was like transitioning into documentary work, into DPing. And I feel like now I'm in another transition, where I'm a business owner. I have a small rental house, and now I'm branching into incorporating other things in what I do. And I think as a person, at least I didn't, when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily dream that I was going to become a filmmaker. But it kind of they're different things that took me in the path.
And
So
it's interesting how like each art you did along the way kind of
yeah,
fit into the next thing you did.
so I'm curious to know, first about your background, how you got into filmmaking, or even if we want to go back even further and see, like, because many times is those experiences in your childhood that spark some kind of creativity or something.
100%. For me, I was a super shy kid.
Mm.
Like we talked to your daughter briefly. Like I was that to a, like she seemed outgoing compared to what I was as a kid, you know? Like it was very hard for my parents to get me to interact in spaces with a lot of people. I have a younger brother who was very social. So like we'd go to summer camp and he'd come back with like 10 friends and I'd be like, I'm not talking to anyone the whole time I'm there. So I was super shy, but that did lead me into television. So by the time I was a teenager, I was not the teenager going out and partying. I was in my room binging Grey's Anatomy or Lost. I was watching when I was like 12 years old. Like all these adult shows I probably was too young to be watching at that
But
time.
Lost changed television. Like it was.
Yeah, it's to this day, it was one of the first scripts I actually read, like found, and was like, I'm gonna read this script. So I fell in love with television, and that was like at a young age, my way of understanding people was through these stories I was watching. And I probably felt at the time like I knew characters more than I knew like actual people in my life.
Interesting.
And then after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I loved TV and I loved watching it. I had no idea about like becoming a filmmaker or becoming a writer. Like they were not, my family is not super artsy. Like it was not like an option or something we really leaned into.
So nobody in your family has like an artistic background, or?
No, I would say later in life, like my grandma has now written some books and like in retirement, she's like sparked this like creativity. And I'm kind of like, oh, grandma, like I'm a writer like now. And I wonder like if I got that from you or something like that. My dad is full on like a businessman. My mom's really into like health and fitness. And then beyond that, like big like football culture. So a little more like sportsy family than like artistic.
Very different.
Yeah, and like I grew up playing sports, but like there was always something missing in it for me. Like I was a little too in my head. Like I'd be like, why are we on the court? Like why are we competing really? Like too heady for like what
The philosophical aspects of sport.
that is what I was more interested in than like actually playing. So I left, graduated from high school and went to college. I went to Appalachian State University in North Carolina, so I grew up in North Carolina. And again, I went in undecided. I had no idea what I was doing. But before I graduated, I had a creative writing teacher who changed my life, his whole class. Like it was the first time in class I felt like really smart. Like I felt like I knew something came naturally to me, and that was my writing. And he at one point was reading it and was like, I feel like I'm watching a movie when I read your like narrative writing. And I was like, I didn't know this could connect to the TV that I love to watch, like on paper. And so then that set me on the path of like trying to understand screenwriting. And at that time I was I wasn't like a film buff. Again, it was like mostly television. Like I loved how I could watch a show and the characters I love in season 1, by season 5, they've transformed and they're someone new. Like I loved that long arc and that spending years with a character and like building up all of this and then feeling that payoff. I thought that as an art form is like still something to this day that I'm very like, I'll nerd out about. So basically somehow along the way, I learned what a showrunner was, which is this mesh between an executive producer and a head writer in the television world. And so as soon as I learned what that was, I was like, I want to do that somehow one day. So I go to college and I got just so lucky. So I went in undecided and went to school just because Boone, North Carolina is gorgeous. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just want to go somewhere very pretty. So I just lived in the mountains, and then they ended up having a broadcasting and TV production program. So stumbled my way into there.
They had it already, or
already? Okay. They had already, and I stumbled into it, and it was again, like a life-changing situation. They have, it's called App TV, so they have their own like television station. And so if you could get into that group, you were part of like keeping up with the programming. Like it was like a regional network, so we actually had to fill it with
Content,
content,
yeah.
which was super fun. So it meant going to class, but the real fun was like after class when we would all stay up till midnight making episodic TV and all that stuff, and then
Editing, editing, yeah.
hitting it in by the deadline. It was like our own mini like SNL every week of get it to air, get it that. So I enjoyed that, and that's where I started producing. So I found that as my lane of just being generally organized, you know, and I wasn't as tapped into like being a creative. Like I didn't feel like, you know, there were guys who were like, I can direct this, and they just could step into that. And I was kind of like, I know how to get what's in their minds to reality, but I didn't step fully into that creative role yet. So it was being a producer, and I fell in love with that there. And it was something I felt like I was good at, and also something that I felt would help me on this ultimate mission of being a showrunner one day. Because I knew that as much as that job is being a head writer, it's being a people leader. You're basically leading a company that is a television show. So I wanted to get really good at producing, basically. And that's the long story of how I got into it.
Not everybody, and I had conversations here at the studio with different friends and filmmakers and people in the industry where there are different paths. Not everybody went through the official path of a formal education. A lot of people go even with different backgrounds in science, in like engineering, and they come out in the other side being filmmakers somehow, you know. I feel like I took both paths, you know, because I was coming from writing and photojournalism, and I did go to school for photojournalism, but then I did 5 years of philosophy and theology, like absolutely non-related of that, you know. But I did documentary work while I was there, and I traveled to many countries. And then finally, when I was in Miami, I went through the film school program for 5 years.
Okay.
So I feel like I have, you know, both of those experiences. What I do find interesting is just these two things that I can highlight from this part of the conversation. First is the impact that a teacher had on you, in your life and your decisions and the rest. And I feel like sometimes we don't validate enough the impact that a teacher can have in the life of a student.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I can highlight from this part of the conversation is that you make the college experience what you really want out of it.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't need to go to college, but you can really take advantage of the college experience. I believe that is beyond acquiring knowledge, and is exactly what you said. Is those relationships, is that group work, is working with people that you don't like, be forced to work on positions that you don't even know if that's what you want to do,
Yeah.
because that translates more to reality than watching YouTube videos and learning to be a filmmaker from online.
Exactly. And like that was a constant intentionality. Like I was really lucky with the people in my year that we all kind of wanted more than what we got in class. So like there were the classes where like a professor is showing us the proper composition and all that stuff, and we had to sit and do the paperwork and all of that. But I definitely took advantage of the extracurricular aspects and like the being part of a television station. Like I was like, at points I was like, school feels like it's getting in the way of like getting to make stuff, you know? Like, so it was I just very lucky, and I think I saw that while I was there, and like just being present of like we're around all this equipment, and sometimes you have to schmooze the teacher to be like, can we take this camera and do X, Y, and Z? So yeah, definitely like for a lot of people in the arts, and when you're going to school for it, or even just in school for something else, like being able to take advantage of the access and the things you have, the professors, but also just the privilege of being a student. Like we rented out a whole bar to shoot something just because I could say it's for class. Yes, it's typical. Like you can't do that now. Now I have to pay and permit and all that stuff. So there's a lot of things you can take advantage of at that age and in that environment.
Yeah, and I guess you don't have the fear of displeasing a client or getting in trouble. It's like things don't go well. Well, let's improvise and do something different.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's interesting because the pressure was all just self-inflicted. It was just like, we want it to be that good. And even that was like important to practice at like a young age. It was like, we're doing this just for us. And so like, there was one time where a classmate was like, it was me and the director and like a couple actors, and they were like freaking out because we wanted to get the scene right or something. And one of the other students was like, guys, we're not in medical school. Like, it's not that serious. And I was like, oh yeah, it's not, but it's kind of fun to pretend it is, you know, when you're in it. And I think it does help that translation to when you're in the real world, and it kind of does have to matter a bit more. But yeah, it was there was no pressure, and that allowed us to make mistakes and allowed us to just like, it was a professor who ran this program and was super adamant about letting students make what they wanted to make. And I know that was a constant battle he had with other professors who were like, they should be making stuff that's connected to the curriculum.
Yeah,
you know?
we need to meet this, expectation, criteria.
Yeah, and I am just so grateful that he would push for that, because it allowed us just so much creative freedom and just to be very to own what we're doing. Yeah.
I think in general, I put myself even in there, we don't value the teachers enough,
No, it's a thankless.
and I'm not just talking about just financially with our compensation. My kids are homeschooled, and so it creates kind of like a different environment. But I'm always in that edge of like being able to, infuse in them the curiosity and the critical thinking, and not just only shelter them and give them an education. So I was talking to a good friend of mine where he was saying, what do you do in general in the current education system that we have? What do you do when a student is not good at math, for example? Usually you set them with a tutor that is going to help them, level to the rest of the class or whatnot. If they're not good at, chemistry, then you try to reinforce that area that they're not good at to be able to kind of balance. And he was saying, would you imagine if it was different, where you have a tutor for the areas that they excel at?
Oh, wow.
And that was like a paradigm shift for me. It's like, interesting. So that you're reinforcing the areas that they know they're good at, instead of trying to reinforce the areas that they don't like. So are you trying to level everybody to this, or are you trying to basically exalt and deposit more into the areas so that was very interesting.
I love that perspective.
I never thought about it. When he mentioned it, I was like, I got a bunch of chemistry classes and algebra and stuff that I've never applied in my life, and I suffer for it a lot. I'm not saying that I'm not thankful, because there are experiences that were attached to it, of like excelling, improving, doing something that I didn't want to do, finding that I was able to do it.
Right.
Because I went to college for filmmaking when I was in my early 30s. So I wasn't young like many of the other students, but I developed good relationship with the teachers. I remember that at some point they were employing me to work on their projects. So I couldn't take classes that semester with them. I had to find another teacher because, I was able to connect with them in work while I was going to school. And I think relationships are very key at that stage, because sometimes the peers that you have, the teachers, the relationships that you made in college, later on somehow are going to become the people you work with or the people you grow with in your industry.
One of the students who graduated with me, I still send him scripts to read, and vice versa. And he just made the leap to LA and is chasing that goal. And another classmate, now friend, who lives here in Atlanta, I had a producer friend reach out to me and was like, I need this actor type. And I was like, sending them TJ's name. And he, got a job. But that's because this is someone I trusted to be like, hire this person. He's a joy on set, like, because we've come through all the craziness of being in college together. But it's so true. It's so true. When I graduated, my first real job on set was from an alumni who was a couple years ahead of me, who was like a production coordinator. And I was only able to get my first PA gig because of her and that relationship. And I acted in a short film for her, at one point, because you do everything and all the roles. And so, yeah, those connections are huge. And I think the sooner you realize the people you're interacting with are people who will be with you forever, like theoretically, the better I think you can grow those relationships, because small world, you know?
I also identify myself with the fact that you were very shy, but I was a mixture of like being very shy and then at the same time a kid that would cause a lot of trouble at school. Oh yeah.
Troublesome?
Oh yeah. But I was very shy, and then making trouble was my way
Of getting
attention, and like kind of like I was channeling that energy
Yes.
in maybe the wrong way, actually. Um, so I went through like 5 different schools before I graduated from high school because of that same reason. I was a good student in the areas of learning, but I was also like getting in trouble all the time.
100%.
And I grew up going to private school
Oh, wow.
in Colombia,
Wow.
and my parents, I don't know if it was a form of punishment, but they were like, okay, this year you're gonna go to public school. And that's a huge,
Like punishment.
that's a huge shift back in my country. And but it was at the public school that I encountered a couple of teachers that put me in positions of leadership. The troublesome kid, the kid that was always making, disorder and like chaos, they gave me responsibilities. And now I find that through those responsibilities, I was rechanneling my energy into something where it was positive. And one of those teachers encouraged me to write poetry, and I wrote something, and it was published on the newspaper in my city. And that was the first time that I was like, okay, I'm a creative. I can write, and then I can take pictures, and I can write articles with pictures, and that started my whole career.
Yeah.
And same thing, because the teacher saw a seed
Yeah.
in me that just needed to be channeled in the right
Yes,
way.
even just like made aware, like, you
Mhm.
know, like I knew I liked to write, but when he said that of like, I can see this, like, I like, oh,
Kind of like calling out
calling
that.
out, like just making you aware, because especially when you're young, you don't know who you are or what you're really capable of. And it does take, I think, a older figure or just someone of saying like, actually, this is what we're all seeing. Like, yeah, you put you in that leadership position, which also like, I think is very interesting, because I think as a shy child, it's interesting how as I grew up, I craved like leadership positions, you know, despite like not loving talking action, but it was like, it is a nice channel, because it is just like, I think it's hard when I wasn't in leadership positions to feel like I could speak up or I could do X, Y, and Z. And I found that if I had, which for better or worse, had the title, whatever, like it was like this, okay, to like, you are expected to do this. So, and I do think, quiet people make great leaders, because they are good at listening, and they
That's right.
stand
That's right.
like that you might not be hearing everything, because you've been there of like that person sitting and being like, I can't say what I want to say. So
I think as filmmakers in general, we're great at telling stories. But, great storytellers actually are also great story listeners. And I think what you said, I totally agree. Sometimes being shy, being quiet, becomes a tool in your arsenal to be able to listen, and then be able to tell the story from what you're learning and what you're listening.
So what, I'm just curious, because what age do you think you stopped being shy, or like, quote unquote, like feel like you couldn't really identify?
I mean, like I said, I was very extrovert in some areas, but very introvert in some other areas, and I'm still am.
Okay.
I'm still am. Like if I go to a networking event,
Yeah.
at the first few minutes or so, I'm quiet. I'm kind of, but once I feel like I'm in my element, boom, social butterfly comes out of nowhere, and like, so man, and people are like, man, you know so many people, you're so extrovert, but inside I'm like, oh, it's not really like that. But I think when I was maybe 12.
Okay.
Yeah, around that,
Cool.
around that time.
Because I remember when I was shy, I would hear like actors or interviews of people being like, I used to be shy, and be like, oh, you have no idea, you don't get it, being like really shy. And then I got older, and like now I don't think I can really identify with that group as much. Like I definitely like now feel much more social and like love talking to people and love getting to know people, which was not me as a kid. So just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I worked with groups of young people, writing for the magazine. Even when I started on TV back in Colombia, um, the challenge was that I was very young, and so people kind of undermined me because of my age, and I developed like a lot of, um, I don't know, fears that people will not respect me, and I wanted to overcompensate with overperforming and pleasing people. And part of the challenge for me of starting very young in my career was developing that anxiety of performing to the point where it almost became part of my personality, and something that I struggle with even today is like I'm shy, then I get to work with these people, and then I feel compelled to perform the best, and if I don't, I'm failing them.
Yes.
You know.
Wow, we have so much in common. Yeah, because I again got super lucky with my first job, which is where I met you, was as a producer at Look Listen. So that was my first full-time job. I'm working with people with way more experience than me, who've like been in the industry longer. And, still to this day, just being a producer, being in a role that does require a lot of experience and does require knowledge and years and all this stuff. When I first started, the need to overperform was the driver, like that was who was in the driver's seat in my anxieties and all of that. Because you want to, as a producer, and I think I was just aware of this, like you want to be that calm captain of the ship,
Yeah.
despite my anxieties of being like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. So I definitely relate to that. And you want to be respected, especially when you're young. It's like respect should be earned, but like when you're young, you're like, I should just have it. Like I should just like, people should know I know what I'm doing, or at least I like be tricked that I'm pretending that I know what I'm doing.
To prove myself.
To prove myself. That driver is huge. And it's something I've gotten better at. I think like I don't know. At a certain point, I realized like I'm good at what I do, and I can like relax, and I can make mistakes and all this stuff. But I think that did just take reps and like time to not be defined by your age, I guess.
I think that anxiety that I developed to perform also lead me into trying to do things by myself to control the outcome. So as I was operating, then DPing, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna move the light, and I'm gonna frame it like this, and I'm gonna try to have control because the output better be the way.
Yeah.
And part of my transition with experience and is learning to delegate and learning to trust. Especially in my position as director of photography, is like I work with a team that is very large. It's the camera and it's the lighting department. I have to work also with the production design and with the producers and with the director. Like you're in the middle of all these expectations, and everybody's looking at your work, because if you're a producer and you did your job, by the time you are on set, like most of your work is already done. Like that, not nobody really sees like, oh, the producers, like they're just chilling there, like, oh, you don't know.
Literally, yes. Thank you for saying that.
But it's like part of easing out the anxiety is learning to delegate and learning to trust people and learning that you don't necessarily have control over every single thing that is gonna come out.
That is huge. Still learning that. That's like, and also I would say the ability to ask questions. I think when I was starting out, I was so hesitant to ask questions because I was like, I don't want people to think I don't know, But that is now it's my favorite tool of just being like, I have no idea what you just said to me. What does this mean? What is this camera type, or all this stuff? And it opens the door for me to learn more, but it also just is like, again, like the delegation. Like as the producer, I don't need to know every camera package like the back of my hand. And I should trust my DPs, my camera ops, my coordinators to be able to like inform me and all of that stuff. But just starting out, it's like you want to know everything so bad, or like at least have people think you know. So the ability to ask questions, I think, is.
And I think that as we're focusing on this industry conversation, but we can also relate that into trying to control aspects of our life that create a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
When sometimes is the letting go of that control that frees you up to be more creative,
Yeah.
to come up with solutions. To, for example, during the pandemic, there were so many aspects that were out of our control.
Yeah.
Like I remember there was so much fear of even going out and buying groceries.
Yes.
You know, people were like, okay,
Yeah.
this week it's
That
not
was
like,
scary.
it's like insane, you know? And so I started realizing, hey, what happened if in the future, for some reason, I cannot get groceries? How can it be more sustainable at home? And that's why I started the greenhouse, you know, and getting the eggs and stuff like that. At one point, eggs went up like incredible. I felt like it was cryptocurrency. Like I'm holding Bitcoin on my. Dude, I have 2 cartons of flexing right here, you know. But I think there's some situations in life that are completely out of our control.
Yeah.
You know, and then we learn to be creative within those parameters. I don't know if you have gone through a personal journey that shows you how the things that you learn in your industry work also apply to parts of your life that better yourself.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking about the control thing. So I have my career that I'm able to like make a living off of is being at a creative agency. So as a producer, you know, what I don't have control of is necessarily like who I'm working with or the content I'm making. So like that's something that's out of my control. You know, we are like a company, we execute, you know, we help with the creative, but it's with the intention of bringing the client's vision to life. And I think that when I first started, I really struggled with that because I was just an incredibly creative individual with like my own stories and my own like questions about the world that I wanted to dissect, and I just couldn't find a place for that in my life for so long. And it took like years of, and we talked about this, of making other people's stuff to be like, okay, how can I get this control outside of what I do? And I found that in my writing. So like your farm, it's like my like final draft docs, and like where I live in screenwriting is like my happy place of like when I write, I feel in complete control. I feel this world can be whatever I want it to be, however many pages, like no one is back checking, all of that stuff. And I found a lot of peace in that. And, you know, when things would happen in my life, as far as like, you know, heartbreak, you know, family matters, all of that, I found, again, going back to my writing as like a sense of control, therapy, processing, all of that. But once I realized that I had the, you know, when coming from like being someone who works at a company that does have resources like gear, insurance, all this stuff, it makes it kind of hard to like step out of that box and be like, I could do it on my own. Because like I'm constantly seeing how many people it takes to like get off
And money.
one thing and money. And so it's like, I can never like do this by myself. So it felt very like, okay, I have to just do this now because this is what I have. And so once I don't know what really triggered it. Like, I think it might've just been time of like, I felt like this pent up, like I'm tired of just writing scripts and I want to see one of my scripts come to life kind of thing. But eventually, you know, I went off and was like, I'm going to make my own short film and I'm going to like try and get this to happen. And it was a story about a teacher that you know, meant so much to me. And since I did that, since then, I felt a different amount of control over my creativity and then a different level of peace at work. So like, because I have this like super fulfilling personal creative life, when I show up at work, it is like so much easier for me to be like, here, let me serve. Let me serve. Nice. Let me do this because I am serving myself personally. And I think that's been the most important learning, is just like finding the personal fulfillment outside of work. which can be hard when we're just in this industry because it's like they're so close to each other yet they're so separate. But yeah.
I think producers in particular could easily fall in the trap of seeing people as, I don't know, a way of bringing value to their projects
Yeah.
and their production. See people as another name in my Rolodex,
Yep.
because those are the assets that
Yep.
many times you bring to the production house or the client. And one thing that I see in you that is very unique and particular to me is that you see those relationships, or at least that's what you communicate to me, not only for the value that they bring to the
Yeah.
project, but the value, that inherent value that that person has. And I don't know if you can talk a little bit of how you actually see people not just as assets, but also build relationships.
Yeah, I'm just so flattered by that because it's something that I assume must come naturally to me because I don't like intentionally, do it. And it also is like I have, like we said, I have a lot of friends who are contractors and who are in this business and who I've gotten to know on a more personal level. And when I do hear about some other producer interactions or sets that are not the best, it's shocking to me because I hold myself to a different standard, and I think that it does come from having a awareness of what we do. So I don't, again, like, we're not surgeons, we're not in a hospital saving lives. We are doing important work, and I won't understate the importance of creativity and of making the content that we make. But at the end of the day, as a producer, I find my responsibility is keeping everyone safe, and then hopefully we execute to what the client wants. But like, I'm gathering people here for something that has nothing to do with them, and they're bringing their talents. So it's also a matter of like, my respect for like DPs and gaffers and like grips and electricians is like through the roof high, because it's a role like I don't get my job done without these people who are specialists in what they do. So I think it's about coming at it from a sense of gratitude that like, as a producer, you're not the one with those specialties typically. Some producers can do it all, but like, typically you're the one who is gathering the right people to execute. And so I think I just have that awareness of like, one, what we're doing does not matter more than the individuals ever in my mind. And then two, I can't accomplish my goal without these people. So they're put on it's a different versus like, I think another perspective of a producer would be, I'm giving these people something, or I'm giving these people an opportunity. And I'm like, they're giving me their talents to help me fulfill this goal.
That's interesting, because it's almost like, because I'm giving you this chance, you better, give me back this. While what you're saying is, in gratitude of what you're giving me, I want to work with you in I want to value you in a certain way that is different. Yeah, that's
It's
cool.
also like, we work in such a cool industry. Like,
Yeah.
I remember being a PA and getting to talk to so many different people on a set, and like, everyone who's in this industry has some semblance of creativity, whether they admit it or not, from the grip to the hairstylist to the makeup artist. Like, it's just like, I'm aware that I'm in a really cool space. Like, people who are filmmakers, who are creatives, they're in this for a reason. And I think that's something that I enjoy. So like, I'm happy to like be there and to get to know people more, because I have the assumption with everyone that there's more under the surface,
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm trying to think of like intentionally, like the way I try to go about it. I think I unintentionally just can't help but care about people. And like, it makes it hard to be a producer when you do that sometimes. Like, I've had moments where you need to, if it's like I love paying people at their appropriate rate, and that is harder than it should be to like accomplish a lot of the times. And it's something, again, I don't want like money to be a semblance of worth, but unfortunately, like, in our society it is, like, of me saying, like, I'm
This
gonna do
transactional.
this transaction, like, but I try to communicate, like, we're gonna do our best to, like, meet your rate or X, Y, and Z. So being a clear communicator, yeah, like, also I feel like people appreciate, and, like, not being a producer who is, like, behind a curtain, like, waving a magic wand of being like, we're all trying to make this project. And I think ultimately being, like, a part of a team while you're working, knowing you are the leader of the team, but knowing you're also just a part of it, which is also, again, where I'm just like, I can't do any of this without the team. And so I think having that intentionality, and then, like I said, I can't help but care about people. Like, we were on a shoot a few months ago, and one of our art PA's car, like, died, and we had to go to, like, a new location or something. And I was just like, you know, there's a world where producers, like, figure it out for yourself and get yourself to set. But I'm like, I know this kid. Like, we're gonna get him there and make sure he's taken care of throughout the rest of the time, because it doesn't, again, if I'm weighing what I ultimately and truthfully care about more, it's the person versus, like, we get the finished video at the end of the day. We live in, like, a crazy world, and I struggle / it's a struggle / a good thing, I guess, like, from what I'm hearing from you, of, like, I weigh the human experience over the outcome or product that we're pushing, because of the perspective I have on the greater world and all the horrible things that happen or that people are dealing with. It's like, if this video ends up bad, that's the drop in the bucket of, like, horrible things that could happen. So I try to just keep perspective, and I think that's very hard to do because we are in an industry of passionate people. And so I try to balance that of, like, I care about the work I do. I want to deliver good work. But if it is a choice, I'm going to try and care about the people first.
I think my takeaway from what you're saying in this particular topic is gratitude and communication keys. Because if I ask you, do you remember what was the first project we were together? I'm pretty sure you don't even remember.
Very first thing, though, because I remember, I know you were on it with Andrew.
No, it was even, I think it was before Andrew. You guys rented a teleprompter.
Oh my!
And it was and then you guys rent, and then April reached out. Hey, are you available or something like that?
What did we rent the teleprompter for?
I don't even remember. And with that, I want to say, I don't remember the first job I did with you. You probably don't remember what it was, but I remember how I felt when I first worked with you.
Wow.
You see? And so what I'm thinking is, these projects are going to be forgotten.
Wow.
These projects, but the way we were treated, the way we relate to people, that remains. That's what we can take away. That's the beautiful thing about what we do. That is not, unfortunately, we're getting to an age where, technology is taking over a lot of those relational things, and as much as it can be a tool, it could be the detriment of us when we minimize that physical contact with that interaction with people, because the projects will forget about them. Years from now, nobody's going to remember that commercial that you did, even the short film that you were so passionate about, But how about the life that you spent with other people, and the relationship that you made, in the way you felt, and you made people feel as well.
Wow.
And sometimes on sets, we all can fall into the trap of focusing on the product so much that we make people feel horrible.
100%. And, like, I've been a victim of that as well, because it's like, you're balancing expectations, stress, and all of that. But also, just thank you for saying that. That's so sweet. And my feeling towards you is that you were someone I trusted very, very early on. And I also was very aware of how talented you are. And two important things that make you want to work with someone again and again. But it's just having that trust. Because I think when when you step on a set and you know that everyone has the ability to do their job, that also does allow me as a producer to then focus on
Hmm.
the other things of making a set better, making sure we wrap on time, like all that good stuff that people like. But you couldn't be more right about like, we're not going to remember these commercials that we're making, but we are going to remember the friends along the way, not to be cheesy, but like some of my closest friends since I moved to Atlanta were from being on set and then accidentally falling into a conversation that we're like, oh my gosh, you're a person that we both have more in common than we could have expected. One of my longest best friends now was a sound engineer who we hired over and over and over again, and then got on set and got so personal somehow. And it was like such a stressful set, but I was like, we need to talk like outside of this. Like, and now they're one of my best friends. And like, again, like the relationship thing is like, when I wanted to do my passion project, that was only possible because of the relationships I had built over the years through commercial work. Like I asked, had to ask favors because like I only had so much money. And so like to get to that place with people where they then, it's not even asking a favor, it's like inviting them in to be part of your creative journey and all of that. That was some of the biggest payoff, like thus far, as far as relationships with crew and contractors go, is like seeing everyone who was able to show up for me when I made that ask. So yeah,
I see everything that we talked about in this part translated also outside of set, where you're building a community.
yeah,
Where beyond, the filmmaking world, you're building a community with friends, people that sometimes don't have the same voice that other people have in the general, audience, and even focusing your projects in a way that you can create a platform that you can create. So why don't we talk about a little bit of how, not only your short film, it's part of that voice, but the community around that and beyond that, that doesn't necessarily have to be film related people, but
yeah. So I am a proud lesbian woman, and I grew up in the South and have been really blessed with my family, community, friends I made growing up. But once I got to college and really got into like the queer community, and then later like Black Lives Matter, like I went to a very white school, like in the rural North Carolina. It's very white. So finding that more Black community when I came here to Atlanta, and then also queer community here, which is like huge. I had no idea when I moved here it was for work, and it was that I knew there was a good like TV industry here. I was like, okay, I'll move to Atlanta. It's gonna be perfect. And then again, got so lucky that there was a thriving LGBTQ IA plus community, and of course, it's like incredibly diverse. Like it is such a beautiful breath of air. Seeing all the different people who are here and just getting to experience that. But all that to say, when I went to, going back to when I was a kid, I loved TV, but what I felt like was missing was the queer representation. So
because even at that young age, you were already sure of your identity.
It wasn't that I was sure, but when I saw, and it was rare, when I saw a queer couple, I was like, I need more of that.
What was the first film that you felt like, oh, what is it?
It was it was a CW TV show called The 100, and one of the main characters fell in love with a girl or something like that. And I was like, I'm obsessed with this couple. Like, they need to be together and all this stuff. And then I was like, maybe I'm obsessed for a different reason. I'll learn that in college.
Interesting.
But, once I realized I was queer and could think back to the content I watched and realized there was a huge hole, like there was a huge lack. Like I thought if there was more, maybe I would have found out I was gay sooner. But because it was so few and far between, it took me so much longer to like realize who I really was. And when I did come out, I did notice I did actually get more extroverted, and I did get more comfortable in my skin and spaces because I knew who I was. But it just felt like a lack of information. Like my parents just didn't talk about it. I mean, they didn't have gay friends or queer people. Like I just didn't see it. And so I was like, this isn't even an option. Like, is this even a thing? And then I go to college, I joined the rugby team, which is incredibly queer and friendly and all of that. And they became a huge community for me and like opened my eyes to so many, you know, alternative ways of living and of finding love and being happy and all that stuff. And seeing that was just so important, and it was so impactful to then lead me to this short film where it needed to not only be a love letter to teachers but to my now community of LGBTQ people. And so I really wanted to make something for us and just something that would fill the space. Like everything I write has a Black queer lead because that's what I needed as a kid.
Okay.
And so I'm constantly writing for my younger self of like what I wished was there. And so I wanted to make this this short for the community because when I started writing it, gosh, I mean, so many of my friends and just people that I know struggle with, you know, whether it's religious trauma, whether it's like hard relationships with family for whatever reason. In our conversations, I was just acutely aware of being a queer or alternative person in this world that is like wanting you so much to conform or just wanting you to be smaller. And then going into media, when people did start having more queer people and all of that, a lot of the times, you know, the lesbian character would die or their relationship wouldn't be what I would say is accurate. But the biggest thing, and was a trend, was lesbians would be casted, they would have an arc, and they would die. And so I very much wanted to write these lesbian relationships where, one, death isn't part of it, and then two, we're seeing a point of joy. And so I wanted to make a film for my community that when they watched it, they weren't watching a horrible coming out story that was going to make them relive something that we've all already lived. It's triggering, yeah. And I think, you know, when people try to tell these minority stories, it's also hard with Black people. Like the first years of Hollywood diving into the Black experience is all about slavery. And it's like, there's so much more to our stories than that. And so
you can say the same thing for Hispanics. The maid, the cleaning person, the driver, the drug dealer.
Yeah, it's like, why, starting from this, not that those things are negative, but just like a very small point of view on people. Typecast. So I just wanted to broaden that. And that's what I want to do with my writing eventually, broaden and then add to our world so that everyone is just seeing more. Because I believe that there can be so much more. For every straight love story, there should be a queer love story. Like I think there should and could be a surplus of content that just shows people living their lives and having a happy ending sometimes.
How did that grow from the film, from your friends, into, hey, let's meet periodically and let's, you know, have a space to do other things, to grow together, to do fun things, to...
Again, like...
Was that organically or was that like very...
I would say organic. Okay. I would say definitely organic, but also being in the queer community, there's a need for that. So many people that I am so happy to call like my friends or even like my chosen family, we have certain family dynamics that like don't lend to being necessarily happy. So like that need for community is like different. Like it's not just like we're gonna go hang out and grab a beer. It's like, no, we're gonna be each other's family. We're gonna have like our own Christmas together. We're gonna have our own Friendsgiving, Thanksgiving, because you might not get to go home to that. Like you don't have that otherwise, you know? So I would say it came organically, but I do think because of who I am, because of my own experiences and the experiences of my friends that I know, it feels more important to, again, like be intentional. Like I'm gonna make sure I'm hanging out with this person because I know this time of year could be really hard.
Wow.
You know? And I just, again, like luck or the universe, whatever, I ended up in a really cool friend group of queer people who are so supportive. We love to have a themed party. My partner will like joke about how every party we have, you have to dress up as something different because we just love to like do add a little flair, theatrics. But they're awesome people, and we just all love to get together and like have fun. Like it's not even like talking about all the hard stuff all the time. It's like we just like to get together. Birthdays, like we all go really hard for everyone's birthday and like try to make them, it does feel like the family's coming together for this person's birthday. And I think, you know, I know people who have, you know, committed suicide, or who have just had such a hard time mental health wise and whatnot, and like you can't not draw the line of that you are a queer person in this world, and maybe you don't have the most supportive family, but like how that will then affect your mental health. So the importance of community again is just like, we need to be the reason for some people to be here. And that is like probably one of the biggest things that I carry with me, is just that you don't know the extent that someone is like mentally, emotionally suffering just to be who they are and just to show up authentically. Like that amount of work is heavy. And so I love to be the light part of the light. Like let's all like have fun and remember that we can, because there's a lot of not fun times. So I'm really, really grateful for my communities here.
When we talk about representation, not only in our industry, but in general, honestly, many times, even corporations, production houses, like many businesses or groups of people, take that as a way of like, oh, okay, let's check the box. You know, we meet the criteria, diversity, you know, of representation. And earlier we were talking about how that shows where your heart is, kind of what your intention is, and what you're doing is different. It's not like, hey, I'm writing this with a black queer character because I can get this grant, because I can apply to these unique film festivals that if it wasn't that story, it wouldn't, because I'm you know, trying to meet that expectation or like whatnot. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit about representation from your point of view that is quite different from where we're getting used to. And I guess that is also the reason why some people are rejecting, you know, the concept of bringing diversity.
Yeah. Like it's like people think it's an extra step of work, and it's like it's actually not. It's actually if you want the best work, you would do this step basically. And I've been the only Black person in spaces. I've been the only woman in spaces, and I've always understood that sometimes just when it's me, it's like that's such an important perspective that this group would have missed out on had the room looked different. And so knowing that I'm able to give that, I have an awareness that other marginalized people can have that same effect on a group, on a set, in a company, what have you. And so I just find it as like a smart way to go about business and to go about productions. Like if I, and then it's also like the authenticity viewpoint. So like, you know, if we are going to tell a story about Black people, about Hispanic people, there is a certain eye that should be on that story because of what we talked about earlier of like queer people and they're just dying or they're living this certain life. I feel like I can tell, and this might be like arrogant of me, but I can tell when I read something and it was about a lesbian or X, Y, and Z when it wasn't written by a lesbian, you know? Or I'm like, oh, this is a Black character. I think it was written by a white person. And I have that eye for it because I do believe that there is a special magic, authenticity, truth to when the people behind the camera, the people behind the paper actually have lived those experiences, or at least would know more closely how to like understand those experiences. So when we talk about like diversity on a set, like it feels like you're just missing out on that true perspective that's going to make this video that much better. It is so important for a million reasons, and I think it's not as hard of work as people like to think it is. unfortunately, you know, what is easy is hiring the people you've worked with over and over again.
Okay.
And I think that's an easy trap for producers to fall into as far as the like diversity situation comes in. And then again, it's like, you know, you're giving someone a chance, or you have to like take a risk or whatnot. And I'm just, you know, really lucky to be in Atlanta where it's super diverse already. And there's a ton of talented people of color and people with all different backgrounds. So it's not the hardest struggle like here in this area, but it's still something you have to push for, weirdly, just because it depends on the people in power. And like a lot of times if we start thinking about broader like corporations, like because we're playing catch up on the diversity side, there is still a lack of people in power who are diverse and are those diverse voices. And so that makes it harder to advocate for the fact that they're like, it's this weird game of like, we're trying to bring diversity on set, but then if you go look at executives running the TV studio, they're all white. So then there's this like clash of like not understanding or not prioritizing. And I think that's another thing that I naturally prioritize it, because I just, again, it's like the circles I have, so it's already a pretty diverse circle, and then two, making it a priority. So as much as I want to make sure my schedule looks right, my crew needs to also like reflect either what we're shooting or just make sure we have a woman on set, make sure X, Y, and Z. And it's not always, you know, sometimes you just get into the capitalist grind of we're chugging out 20 videos this month, so I can't, again, the priority, it's like one of the first things to go when we talk about like and that's what the whole country is dealing with, like DEI programs are all being stripped down. It's one of the first things to go when people are tightening their wallets or whatnot. And I don't think it should be that way. I wish that it felt, as much as you should have your gaffer, your grip, all of that, I wish there was also like this conversation of who do we have behind the cameras, who do we have on set, and is this gonna serve our story? So yeah, I don't know if
I think my takeaway is that diversity, inclusion, and all those hot topics that we have in our society can be viewed from two different lenses. One that is about perception, right, and making it look like we care, making it look like we're checking the boxes, making it look like we're going with the system, or it can be like what you said about perspective. And that's different because it's more like, regardless if you're black or white or Hispanic, or, you know, it's a voice that is going to add to my project. Right.
And sorry to interrupt, but just like going into the checked boxes, like that also, I think, is an insult to all the talented people of color crew, because, you know, I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think you can still prioritize the talent of someone and like their skill set without being like, I'm just hiring them because they're black. Like, I think that is.
I felt like that in some productions where I honestly know they hired me because I'm Hispanic and they just wanted to show.
And it's like,
and you're like, oh man,
and that's not. I don't know why, like, and then you're not helping. Like, and then it's like neither side is truly that box really isn't getting checked, you know? Like, you're not hired, you should be hired still for your skill first, but like, and then you're also Hispanic, like that also adds, you know? And I just think like that's probably why there's some resistance to it, because people don't understand that like you're not just hiring these people to check a box. You are still hiring potentially very talented, very nuanced people who will add. And I just wish that that more people had that perspective and didn't just treat it like, let's throw this person on set just because then it suddenly doesn't matter somehow. Like so
if you're writing a gay agenda, what is it inside that agenda? What is the voice?
Oh my gosh, the voice is just that the gay agenda truly is trying to just free people of expectations. We're just trying to free everyone from like having to play a part and just getting to be who you feel authentically you are. And I wish more people would be able to break free from those, but it's hard. It's not easy, and it can be intimidating to see someone just living how they want to live, just cause, and no inhibitions and all of that. And I think I want more people to be more welcomed into the gay agenda, even if you're not gay. Like, just like, come on in. And
Now that you're transitioning in another job position, but also as you have your first short film coming out, and also, like, what do you foresee not only in your career but in the community that you're building?
Yeah.
What is it that you know are anticipating that's going to happen, especially now that our industry is so changing
So
rapidly?
changing.
And how do you see yourself also in a personal way kind of shifting at this? You're no longer that young producer, you know. Now you're shifting
Experience now. Like, I've done things. So my hope is that I am still part of the industry that is keeping us human, that is telling authentic stories, and that is thriving. Like, as much as the industry has gone through ups and downs, part of why I love being a producer is because it is a position of power that I think can really make an impact on the way that people are treated on set, the pay that people get to live a life outside of a film set, to get to go home to your kids, to take that month off that we talked about. Like, those feel achievable to me.
Okay.
And so I want to be a optimist in our industry, and I want to continue to push for change, but mostly from the producing side, where it's logistically, but also from the storytelling side. I feel a responsibility, like, to put it lightly, to challenge perspectives with the stories that I want to tell. So I hope to continue writing and just to continue making things and being a voice, because there are thousands of them, and we're entering times where some voices are going to be so much louder than our voices. And so I just hope to be someone who, despite whatever tackles this country, this industry, I'm continuing to tell these stories and to tell them from my perspective. But yeah, now I also, like, I want to, like, just continue collaborating with people. Like, I love getting to, like, whenever I'm, like, talking to a DP of, like, just, I always learn something new, like, and even when you're, like, setting things up here, it's like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So, like, continuing to learn. There's still, like, so much around filmmaking, production, that, like, I don't know and that I can't wait to learn, which is also why I love this industry, because it's like there's so many ways to grow and different paths to take. So, I've got a few things in the works. I won a grant recently that I'm excited to make another short next year with, and then continuing to commercial produce as the day job, and hopefully be in a writer's room someday.
Awesome. And I think the way I see it is that it all starts with a script. You can have all the equipment, even actors, staff, crew, whatever. Without a script, you have nothing. Like, you don't have a story. Like, crazy. That is the backbone of every single.
And so many people love to skip that step.
Like, why are you gonna shoot then? Like a music video again? Like,
I am such a script snob now, because I've had, because of being very collaborative, I've gotten to, when I first started writing, I was having my friends who had no idea what a script was just read my scripts, and I'd just be like, tell me how it makes you feel. I know you don't understand all the intricacies of a script. And then as I got a little older, I got to have, professors read my scripts, and then someone I networked with, maybe a producer, would read it and all that stuff. And it was just like 2 years ago, I had my first studio executive read a script and give me notes. And so,
how was that experience?
I always say, like, writers should love notes. Like, notes are your best friend.
It's your baby, and sometimes you can feel very protective and
and I try to get ahead of that with myself. Okay. So it's my baby when it's just mine, and then I have to separate and say, now I want to make it the best baby, Okay. And the only way I can do that, go grow with other people. And this past year, I had my first call with a WGA writer who was so gracious to read my script. And I also think it's like I take notes easily because I'm so grateful someone read my script. Like it's the hardest part when you're starting out as a writer is like, can you someone read 60 pages or review? And once I had, so every time someone gives me notes, it's like, just thank you for like getting through the script, you know? But that writer gave me a note on my script that I wouldn't say it's changed my life, but it's pushed me furthest in my writing career. She asked me, why now? Why now? Are you like, why did you open the script on this specific moment? And I don't think it's the right moment. And when she first told me that, I was like, this is where the story starts. Like, da da da. Like, this should be it. And I was so like,
because you're hooked.
Yes, I was like, this is why I started here because I felt like this was the most interesting part. And it wasn't. I found a different interesting part. And as soon as I made that edit, it went to some producers in LA through connections. And I'm now getting to develop my first TV pilot where I've never gotten this far. I don't know where it will go, but like the fact that I took that one note from one call where I easily could have let my ego take over and be like, she doesn't get it, you know, like, da da da. But really, it was one of the strongest notes I've ever gotten on a script that then my script where it's at now never could have gotten there without that one piece of feedback. So I am a fiend for notes and feedback and just grateful for anyone who can get past page 20, you know, a lot of the times. But I'm also just like, I hold writing in a really high regard. Going back to what you were saying of just like, it is the foundation of the story.
Yeah.
It is also like going back to communication. It is, you're talking to everyone on set through the script. So I'm always thinking, what information is the actor getting?
Yeah.
What information is the set designer getting? The DP, without even saying like camera pans here. Like that's not my job. And my job is to say the focus is on this person in the scene and like all of that. And so I find it as it's your communication tool throughout the whole process. And it's my one point of control. So like you have to put everything in here because the further you go down the process of filmmaking, you lose control basically with every step. You know, now this is the actor's job. Now this character is theirs, you know? And so I love on the front end, you give that character everything in the script so that when you hand it off to the actor, you are able to release control because you know you've given everything to the actor. And, you know, going to my short, I had Elia Vasquez as the teacher in it. And I wrote the teacher, but then I had a conversation with her and I was like, this is your character. And I know based on your perspective, your ethnicity, like you're going to inform this character in a way that I could not in the writing process. And so it was a very clear like handoff of like, I need to ask her what Miss Amato would do. And it's a beautiful part of the process. Like I think it's really cool. I love writing. I love getting to read scripts and all.
Because at the end of the day, I'm disregarding the ability of our audience to be informed, to read, but many times audiences want to be entertained for the most part. Yeah. Some people might go and dig something a little deeper, but if they wanted to be informed and analytical, they'll read a book, right? They don't go and watch a movie in this suspense of disbelief. But it's the writer who taps into that source of deeper knowledge, deeper understanding. The writer is the one who is informed by these books and these influences. And then through the script, you know, is dissecting that, disseminating that information that at the end of the day is consumed by the general audiences. So it is a huge responsibility from the writer to actually take these higher concepts, even philosophical ideas, deeper meaning, life-changing stuff, translated it
the translation
into something that general audiences will get, although they're looking for entertainment.
Exactly. And that's like with my ethos of like, yeah, I want to show more queer people, but like what's entertaining? Like, you know, like, I love writing
what makes sense. You know, not just pushing something for
don't just put it there to put it there, but you have to, as the writer, say, okay, for example, I want to talk about wealth and inequality and all of that. you don't just write that, No, it's like I'm talking about, I'm gonna come up with a fake corporate, I'm gonna come up with this and that. And so it's a fun game of like communicating underneath. A lot of like, you're making metaphors, you're hoping that the audience feels what you're trying to say more than you're outright saying it. And so I think that is the biggest tool a writer can have. If you want anyone to be able to sit down and enjoy what you've watched, and then maybe they're like, that makes me think about this, or maybe I'll do this differently. But you can't, it's not our job to be outright with it. It is our job to intellectualize and turn it into something that is enjoyable, that is beautiful, that is heart-wrenching, and just hope that the message like remains throughout.
And although the name of the movie for some odd reason escapes to me right now, but last year when I went to Toronto, this movie got a bunch of accolades, and it's a movie about this black author.
It's American something, like
American Story. Yeah, is it? Yeah. Okay. So, what a remarkable movie.
I didn't see it.
Oh, I
need to watch it.
It's so interesting. It's just so funny and so odd and so insightful and so full of heart. It's just such a remarkable, because it talks about these topics of representation. It talks about the topics of being a black voice. It talks about these topics of having, queer stories within the actual movie, but in such a way that is so insightful, and it just makes you think first. It, for me, is one of those examples of a story that can bring a lot of those elements in such a beautiful, well-written way.
Yeah.
And as we're talking, I'm like, I definitely appreciate a movie like that, because it made me think.
Yeah.
It's almost like a looking inside the machine.
Yeah.
And self-criticizing what we're doing because of the reason we're doing it.
Yeah.
Not that we're doing it, but what are the intentions that we're doing it.
Exactly.
And it's out of that pure introspection that the movie really makes you think and appreciate.
Exactly. And like a movie like that doesn't do it by just telling you, like saying, Carlos, look deeper.
Yes.
Like, no, like
Yes.
It's when you can allow the audience to ask themselves.
Yes.
I think that is like the key of like, you can't point the finger, you can't give it away. Like, it's like you set the stage, and then you hope that like, someone's like,
in that particular movie, it's so cringy. But it makes it to where, wow, it just makes you think a lot. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
But that's something that I think in our journeys, they kind of collide with the things that we do and inform the things that we do. But at the same time, the things that we do really impact our lives, and it just becomes a circle,
Yeah, exactly. Like like you were saying, like the friends I have were from the things I do. Now the things I do is because of the friends I have that make it possible. And so that's a cool cycle to.
Awesome. I've really learned a lot from our conversation. I do want to end up this part of our interview with some practical things that you think, in your experience as a producer, can benefit other people, not only in the industry, but also in situations where their work depends a lot on these relationships, depends a lot on, working with a producer. So if a DP or a gaffer or even a PA or somebody wants to work better, communicate better with a producer, what are those things that you have encountered? These are practical things that I would tell anybody working in this.
First thing that comes to mind is get on the phone with people as much as you can. When you're starting out and maybe you aren't on a set or anything, just find people who will talk to you for like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, come up with questions for them, interview them just to get to know what they do and who they are. That's something I did starting out, where like I had no business talking to these people, but I was like, can I just have 30 minutes of your time to understand what you do? And then in terms of phone call, when you are the producer, when you are the PA, if you get a text from your producer and you're like, I'm not quite sure what they mean, you should call and ask.
Okay.
If you're a producer talking to a DP and I've been guilty of this at times where I'm just like, I can't pick up a phone right now, I'm in back-to-back meetings, but it's always whenever I have hopped on the phone with someone, I've been like, thank God we just talked this out.
Okay. Wow.
So always pick up the phone if you have more than one like follow-up question. Uncertainty means you don't have enough information. So as a producer, you know, you're working with directors who have the vision, creative directors who hold the vision. And sometimes if I feel stumped of like, should the location be this? Should it be that? It's because I'm lacking information. And so I think realizing when it's not a matter of your ability, but it's just that you need more information. And so knowing when to push for more questions, more clarity, just saying one more time, tell me what you want this to look like, you know?
Got it. Yeah.
I think that's huge. Don't be afraid to make sure you understand the vision, so that you can execute. Because a lot of our job is taking something from someone's head and their imagination and making it a reality through the people you hire. I think you know, as a PA is being a PA is so stressful. You know, you're new. You're getting asked to do everything from taking out the trash to sweeping the floors to like helping get the food. So stressful. I would just say for any like job in production is, again, have that perspective and stay calm. Know that, you know, if lunch is late, just make sure you get lunch. You know, I've seen PAs not even be able to get lunch. But just get the lunch and know that, you know, everyone's going to wake up the next day and be okay. And hopefully you have a producer who also understands that being a PA is where you learn the importance of everything on set. So you learn the importance of why lunch needs to be there on time so that the crew who've been working so hard are fueled up for the next half of the day. But I was that PA who was like sweating with anxiety about like, oh my God, I hit traffic, so now lunch is gonna be 10 minutes late. My life is over.
Okay.
You know, take a breath, because and remember, you know, it's you're on a set. This is one of the most fun jobs ever. And so if I could tell my younger self anything, it would be like, have more fun along the way, and have a more relaxed vibe when you can, because there are times on set where you cannot, and when it is when you are the producer and maybe something's going wrong or the director is freaking out about something that showed up and it should have been purple but it's pink, you know, and you have to be that calm presence on set, and it is
Firm at the same time.
It's such a balance, and so the sooner you can understand that balance for yourself of like, where are the moments of levity versus the moments I need to be completely dialed in to make sure I'm getting everything on the right track. And that's a very hard balance, but just being aware when you can, I think will take you far.
What is your take on like the energy that each individual brings to set? Because nobody has the same personality, and I've heard of people like, oh, I love this person because it's so outgoing and so awesome, and they have such a great energy. And other times they're like, man, your energy is just too much. We need for you just to be quiet and like.
That's so interesting, because that is definitely like something a producer, I think, manages with the director, because it's also like a preference thing at times. Weirdly, like I've had directors that are like, I want this kind of a person on set, and it's like, okay, I don't know how to suss out that personality trait, but like we'll see. You know, I think it's learning that firstly, you know, I think there's a base level of just kindness and respect that everyone should have. No matter if you're extroverted or introverted, I think it's fair to have the expectation of like, you should be respectful and you should be kind. And then after that, I would say it comes around your talent. Like at least for me personally, I don't really care if someone's more outgoing or if they're shy or if they tell a funny, weird joke every 30 minutes. If it's not distracting, I would say that's the line. If it's not distracting, be who you are on set. Bring your
or disrespectful sometimes.
Yeah, it's not disrespectful. Like, be who you are. But there is a line that you have to get. But I think that's just like baseline like set etiquette. Like as long as someone has like their set etiquette down, but they're kind of like, oh, that guy is a weird vibe, but he hasn't done anything wrong, then I'm not gonna not hire him again, because it's like he's doing his job. Maybe that's just who he is. And just as much as we talk about diversity means a lot of different things. It does mean there are different personalities on set. It does mean that ages, like what you're interested in, like where you are from location wise. Like I would say, at least for me, I don't get turned off by someone's personality. It has to be a little bit more than that for me to be like, I'm not gonna work with this person again. And I hope, like, and it's also like, it is work. So like, just like when you come into a company, you're not going to be best friends with everyone you work with, but that doesn't mean you can't work with them. And so I try to treat set like that. Like, if this person is showing up and doing their job, but we don't have anything in common, like, it's not really something to judge them on. So, yeah.
And what do you consider will be a couple of like practical red flags from your perspective where, like, dude, like, this is definitely something.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking to the if you're talking to the director too much, I would say, like, if we are on set and
there's not like channel through.
If you have a camera PA, for instance, and you're the DP, but the camera PA is coming up to the director every 10 minutes instead of going to their head of department, I would say that's a bit of a red flag. Goofing off too much. Like, if we have to be camera ready in 30 minutes and you're having a 20-minute conversation, that's a red flag as far as like, just professionalism. Like, there are certain times on set where I think everyone should know now is the time we are dialed in to get ready for the day, to make sure we make our schedule. So if I sense someone is not aligned with that, that's a bit of a red flag to me of like, okay, you're not focused on our goal, which is making our day and making things look good. Another red flag,
punctuality, I guess.
Punctuality is huge. Is so huge. And I feel like a hypocrite because I was so late today. But as a producer, 100%. If someone's showing up late multiple times, one time is fine. Always text your producer.
Okay.
So if you are never late, you hit traffic or something crazy happened, text your AD, text your producer, just let them know and give an update. That's huge. Whenever
anticipate, because you never know what could happen. Yeah.
Whenever a crew member texts me what's going on, I feel way more willing to give them leeway versus a crew member who just shows up late and didn't tell me anything.
Or didn't even respond.
Didn't even respond to me being like, where are you? I don't know what's going on with you. So again, to the communication.
Because at that point, it speaks of the character, not of the...
Exactly. If I know you're trying, things happen. It happens. But there needs to be that communication. I always appreciate that. Punctuality is huge on a set. It's the place where time is money and where the producer is literally going to have to pay more if we go over. So there are real implications to timing and all of that really weighs on the producer. And I'm trying to think of another red flag. I'd say, like, anyone who is, because we've talked a lot about asking questions, and I get a red flag when I ask a question and I intentionally, unintentionally get made to feel like silly or stupid, like you should know that. I would say, like, people who are arrogant or people, and it's not like you have to sit down and teach someone, but just being, there's so many, I would say 90% of the time, it's a nice crew member being like, oh, it's this, da-da-da. Give me a quick answer, boom, boom. And then the other 10%, it's a different story of just like either not answering, not having the time to do it, or just an odd vibe around it. I'd say that gives me a red flag. But generally, like, I would say just time. Be decent on set. Like, just if you're a good person and you're good at what you do, that's going to take you so far on set, no matter what your personality is. I don't mind people who are picky eaters. Some producers might say differently. But a lot of times when you're producing, you're having to feed 20 plus people and you can only feed them from one place. And so it's very hard to like make everyone happy. So tip to producers is just accepting that. Like, I had to learn, I'm not always gonna be able to please everyone. I remember I would have like one guy on set grumbling that there wasn't like a specific thing for breakfast. And I was just like, fuck, like I should have had that. But it's like, no, like you do what you can to feed your crew, and people are always gonna grumble about something. I would say try to be the crew member who understands that there are 100 people that the producer and the production are trying to please, and so not taking it personal when production is balancing all those hats, and just continue advocating for yourself. I am 100% like, as crew, like, because production is wearing all those hats, you have to advocate for your team, for you. Like, if lunch was late, like, yeah, you should speak up and say, hey, that was not acceptable, but also with the empathy of that it was not intentional, like, like understanding that. So definitely advocate for yourself. If you don't feel safe on set for whatever reason, speak up, because you're likely not the only one. I always I had a grip just walk up a step, and he's like, hey, I just want to let you know this step is kind of creaky. It's been creaking multiple times. Like, just don't want anyone to like accidentally fall through or whatever. So grateful to know that, because producers only have their eyes can only be in so many places at once. So don't be afraid to call out, even if it seems small, because those things on set.
Yeah, as long as you do it with the right attitude, it will be taken.
Not being like, oh, you should have built different steps, but like just want everyone to be safe, you know? And so I think attitude and coming at it with empathy and knowing it, with the thinking that people have their best intentions, I think will take you very far. Like, the DP didn't snap at you because he hates you. He snapped at you because he's juggling. He's super stressed out, and he has 4 other people yelling at him, and da-da-da. So, like, the quicker you can realize people are not trying to, like, be mean to you, people are coming at it, assume people have good intentions until they make it very clearly otherwise. And I think,
Something that I'm still learning and that I had to apply recently is, when you know you're in the wrong, even if it takes you time to process it, just, say, I'm sorry.
Huge. That's huge for producers too. Because we don't have all the information all the time. And like, so much of the job is making mistakes and like trying to make sure people understand you're trying to get to the right answer, even when you do end up wrong. So I love when the mistake is pointed out, because sometimes you're moving so fast as a producer that you like don't realize that you said this, but you actually meant that. And now someone's having to run an extra errand, or you said you'd have this camera and a different camera, shows up on set. Like those mistakes, like ultimately a lot falls on the producer. Like I try as a producer to just take responsibility, even if it's my director who did X, Y, and Z. It's like, that's still my production at the end of the day. And I think it only builds respect more when you can say, I messed up, or I'm going to just take responsibility for this one. It's hard, like, not to say it's not hard. It's definitely like a ego check all the time, but it's one of those things where the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get at it.
That's awesome. I mean, we talk about from being shy to being extrovert. We talk about, how really incorporate the people around you, not only because you value what they do, but you value how they are. And it was great learning from your own story, and how that teacher that impacted your life now also becomes a way that you can tell a story of a teacher impacting the life of others. I mean, it's awesome. Like, it goes full circle. And I'm pretty sure as I share this content with other people, and people get to know the value of these conversations, they might want to reach out to you or see more about your work. So how can people connect with you, and also how can people learn about your short film and the things that are coming up?
Yeah, so my short film is called Take Note, and it will it's been doing the festival run this year, but we're going to release it next year. So I would follow Take Note Film on Instagram, TikTok, all of Facebook. And then to follow me, because I do post sometimes behind the scenes or all that stuff, but you can always Instagram DM me as well. So that's Ciera, Ciera Thompson _ on Instagram.
That's awesome, because I know that some people are gonna watch this. I don't know how many, but feel identified, and they might want to go to your parties and be part of your circle. So it's not just about work. It's not just about following the film. It's like building this community, making it broader.
Always.
So that's awesome. Thank you very much for coming, for sharing.
So fun.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time sharing. If you like this type of content, these interviews, these conversations, I encourage you to share them from the YouTube channel or on social media. And I'll see you in the next episode of Beyond the Scenes.